I'm back, potentially to show you what not to do, but isn't that always the case? I came on this morning and put a coat of Dixie Belle gator hide on top of the table after I had already put 2 coats of paint and 1 coat of gator hide and let it sit, over a couple of days. Then I sanded it down a little bit with a fine grit sandpaper to give it a little bit of tooth, but I had put that first coat of top coat on there with a brush because I wanted a little bit of ridges to for my black that I'm about to apply to have something to grab onto, but I didn't want it too much, so I sanded that down with a very fine grit. I think you should probably use about a 300. I had a 220, so that's what I used, but I was easy on it. Then I dusted that off. Then I put a coat of Dixie Belle gator hide on here with the sponge so as not to add any more brush marks on here, to smooth it out just a little bit. And I know that was over an hour ago because I did it before I went to lunch. And if you have been watching, this is a garage sale table. It was just a wood looking table, and I'm gonna add Amy from Favored Nest, who is a local sign maker here, is gonna come and show us and make us a stencil to go on here. And I've asked for that to be about 12 by 18. And I'm estimating that this piece of cardboard box that I found is about 12 inches long. So I put that there and kind of centered it, and I'm estimating this is the center of my table. These are about 5 inches. A dollar bill is 6 inches. The dollar bill would go a little farther out. So I'm going to imagine that each of these is around 5. So it would be 20 inches if I go from here to here, and I don't have anything to cover that up with, but I'm only going to wax from here out, leaving this area here undone until after we get the stencil on there. Now, hoping and praying that obviously it's dry to the touch, the gator hide on here, but I can't wait. I'm about to go home for the weekend, and I really want to have more of this project done. This is Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax, which I've never used, but I've heard it's the best dang wax, so we'll find out. And then I have the black wax. This is a Dixie Belle Best Dang Wax in black. And I wanted to make sure that whatever wax or patina or glaze or whatever that I was putting on here is in black, not brown, because remember I painted the legs and the underneath ledge of this table in black. And so I need the shade of the shading and things that I put in the ridges up here to be black as well, not to have any gray tinge or brown tinge. And so I'm going to go with that. I have the Paint Pixie wax brushes that I use. I usually have these marked. Like this one is my dark and colored wax one, so that I don't ruin every one I've got by putting it in dark. But the tip that I wanted to share with you on this today is to, before you put a dark wax on, put a clear wax on. And that gives you a base coat so that, especially with the chalky and mineral and clay top finish paints, they really have a lot of grab and a lot of tooth to them, even when you put the water-based poly over them. And if I was to just go over this whole thing with black right now, I would have no control over that, and it would probably stress me out to the max. So the best thing that I know on that is you go over your area first. I'm going to do a small area here, then I'll go around, but I want to make sure that y'all can see this a little bit. I'm going to grab some of the wax and put it on first, and I'm going to be wanting to go in these crevices and things like that, but I'm going to get this on here, but I'm not yet going to like buff it off and try to get a shine with it. It's actually dulling it up a little bit. It has a little bit more pull and tooth. This is my first time to use this wax. It is very soft. It looks pretty white instead of clear, but let me look at it. Yep, it does say clear, so I didn't grab the wrong thing. Hi, Ashley. So, just to do this small area for y'all to see in case I have a disastrous phone go dead or something like that, you would put your clear wax on. You can let that dry if you want or not, but then you come back with your black wax or your dark wax of any other fashion, and they're colored waxes. I've used the grays and the browns before, never the black, are very, very soft. So this is gonna you know, run through here well. I'm wanting most of this to be in the crevices, but I want it to come around the edges a little bit too. This table's wobbly because I don't have the proper nuts and bolts holding it together, and I'm trying to cram a good bit of this dark wax into the crevices. So I'm going to get as much as I can in there, and here where it's going over, I want to make sure that it doesn't leave a you know, a straight line anywhere where I ended up working and started working. So I'm going over the clear wax that I've already put on here, and I'm going to leave this for a second to sort of stain. It has a little bit of pull and a little bit of drag. I'll show you what this would have done if I didn't put the clear under it by doing this area here. It's going to darken up my red even more, but I'm not going to want to go too deep or too fast into these crevices because I want this dark wax to stay in there and stain it a good bit more and have that stay in there. But here I'm going to wipe off everything but those edges, and you can hopefully see that. I'm going to try to bring it a little closer. Sorry about this, it's getting a little cray-cray here. I'm on a tripod. Let's see if I can tilt it over. Can you see how much darker the red is here than it is, say, here where it's brighter, where I don't have any wax? So I'm beginning to shade around the edges of the crevices, and you can now, depending on how much you rub it and how long you rub it, remove as much of that as you want to. I don't want to remove a whole lot, but I don't want the whole thing dulled down either. So I do want to remove a good bit, just less toward these edges, because I want it to look dirty in those edges. And I believe that that's going to do exactly what I want. I'm going to try to back it up a little to see if you can see right here. And I don't know that you can. This is where I did not put the clear wax on first and just went straight to the black. And see, that's not wiping off as good or as much. So depending on, and if I didn't have 2 coats of gator hide on here already, it would have soaked into that red paint and you know, effectively ruined the redness of the finish. But one more tip, if I say did not want it this dark and I wanted it a little bit high amber and I wanted it a little bit lighter, and I had already put this black on here, say with this patch down here, we can do this. You go back to your clear wax, put a little more on there, and you use it as an eraser. I'm going straight over that black wax with the clear wax, and it's gonna sort of re-liquefy it and make more of it's an eraser. It makes you be able to erase more of the dark colored wax. So I'm going to continue to do this over the entire table. Let me see if I can tilt you back up. I'm going to continue to do this over the entire table if y'all want to watch a little while, but it's going to be not much different than it is right now. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm going to finish this little panel I started on here and then go through that part. And I just probably should have let it sit over the weekend with the gator hide top coat on there before I started waxing, but I'm not always as patient as I should be. And it was dry to the touch, so let's get it deep down and good in the crevices. Over the rest of the finish, but make sure where you run over at that there's no straight lines, because it will leave a straight line through there and you'll be mad at yourself later. Don't ask me how I know that. And I'm going to continue around the edges because I started there that way. I believe I don't mind the edges being a little bit darker, and I'm not going to use the clear wax there first. So that's a decision that you make with each project and each portion of the project. But I'm not going to try to go all the way around this whole table without stopping to wipe some off first, because if I did that, the wax is going to start to dry and I'm going to have such a hard time buffing it off and getting it down to where I want it that I'll actually ruin part of my finish. So I'm going to do a little bit, wipe a little bit. And see how I left that there a little bit longer, and it's a little bit darker around those edges, and that's the look I was going for. Thank goodness I can say that, because it may not have been the look, but it would be the look I had right now until I went back to erasing some. But I really, I don't know why I'm so excited about this table. Hopefully, my husband will be able to find some bolts to hold it together so it'll be a little more sturdy. And we can come up here on Sunday and get those put in. But because I'm going to have to pull one of these legs off to make that happen, I figured I would go ahead and get this coat on here while I was up here and making that happen. So since this is the top, remember I've got this here blocking the area that I know I'm going to be using my stencil on later, and so that I don't put wax on it and then, you know, possibly ruin my own ability to make it adhere. And that'll be, Amy will be doing that. What I did was go to, if y'all watched last week, I have a silhouette and I made a stencil, and I have some Cricut brand stencil material, which I heard wasn't good, but I bought it anyways because it's supposed to be a good brand. And it was a fail, epic fail. I was not able to use that stencil. I just went back and cut some vinyl and put vinyl on that instead of stenciling. So I'm like, who do I know who is an awesome stenciler who would come and teach us the tips and techniques that a professional uses? So Amy at Favored Nest is our one, and I'm so thankful for her. And that'll be Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning. I have an event scheduled for it, and then I'll send out, if you get the live notifications, I don't send them usually for these little short lives, but for the larger, more technical things I do. If you're signed up for that, I'll send out a reminder about an hour before, and Amy will show us how she cut out the one that I found on Pinterest with, I don't know if she has a Cricut or a Silhouette or what brand of cutter she has, but she cut out specifically the farmhouse one that we wanted, and she's going to bring it up, and we're going to, you know, adhesively. I know you've seen me stencil a bunch of times where I just hold the stencil down and dab my paint on it. Or when it's something as big and as important as a dining table, rather than just a little sign, then, you know, you want to make sure and do it right and not make any mistakes, because I'm not going to want to try to figure out how to fix this afterward. So she's going to come up, show us how to put it down, and then show us what procedure she would use to add the paint to it. And I don't know if we'll use her paint or my paint. We'll see what she wants to do there. But anyway, so we will learn the tips and techniques from somebody who does it for a living, and I'm so appreciative of her for that. Okay, so now we have a coat of clear wax down from here over. Try to fill it in. With doing this before, using the gray wax and the brown wax, I noticed that if I only left it a short amount of time on a surface that already had a top coat on it, the way that this does with the gator hide, that it didn't leave it as dark as I wanted it to in the crevices. So that's why I'm doing a little bit larger of an area right now and really pounding it into these crevices and not going back in and getting that out real quick. because I do want to make sure that they're good and stained, I guess would be the way to put it. I went with like a farmhouse style. Hi Teresa, hi Marjorie. Hi Morgan. You know, I don't want the table just because it's red to be specifically, you know, a Christmas table. I don't know very many of us who can afford to have a whole new dining set just for Christmas. But I went with the, like the farm to table farmhouse type thing. So I'm really excited to get that on here. I don't know why painted furniture excites me so much, but it does. So now before it gets too dried on, let's get some of it back off. And it's okay if it sticks more in some areas than others. If you'll notice, I'm starting here in the center, because in the center is where your light would normally hit it. And where your light would normally hit it is the area where it would be lightest and brightest. And in the areas around the edges, that's where more shadow would be, and that's where it would naturally be a little bit darker. So I'm making sure to hit the centers first and then leave the dirty edges for last. I'm so in love, y'all. That's not my husband I'm talking about, even though I do love him. I'm more in love with this table at this minute. Don't tell him if you know him. Amber, shh. He wouldn't understand being replaced by some wax. And be prepared to lose some rags. In here somewhere I have a box of t-shirt rags that I bought, and in here somewhere, well, right over there, a whole 10 feet away, I have a box full of old t-shirts that we cut up so that I could have those for buff and wax. But when I started, I had this dish towel here, and I don't want to ruin my washer and dryer, so I use these till I can't use them no more, and these I throw away. I don't mind throwing old pieces of t-shirt away as much as I mind throwing these away, but it is what it is. I'm still, even though I've wiped these areas, I'm still leaving the majority of the black wet in those crevices, and I'm going to come back at the very end to get those, so that they have time to really partially dry and sink in. And I don't know if y'all can see from there, but the heat of my hand, I'm burning up in here. Everywhere I hold it down for a minute to try to hold the table steady, it melts the wax a little bit. So until it's set, there's potential of that, so I have to be careful and buff that back off. Can't remember if I clear waxed this edge. Let's do it again. And I'm going to go ahead and do up to the area of where our sign will be, our stencil. Remember, this is the center sort of crack of the table where the leaf would go. I'm just pretending it's another crevice in the table and going right over it. So that's 5, 10, 15, 20 inches. And I just use it like an eraser. I can see there's a comment from way over here. I can't see it, so I'll come over and look in just a minute and I'll answer it. Unless my phone goes dead, then I'll answer it when I get my battery recharged. With that, this wax is so soft. The dark wax is so soft, but with the coat of the clear wax already down there before I do this, it makes it a little bit pulley, a little bit tough to do. Turn my rag a little. Trying really hard not to go past the area where I know our stencil's going to be. I don't want there to be like a line of demarcation between where I wax today and where I wax Tuesday after we stencil. Another one of my paw prints. Okay, that's a workout. I'm gonna come over and read a couple of comments and give myself a break for a second. Let's see. We're remodeling our kitchen oak cabinets. I want to chalk paint them off-white with dark wax. Seymour, it won't let me. I'll have to read that afterwards and reply, Teresa, but I will. It won't. I can click the see more. Thank you. I love the red too. Hi, Amy. But I'll finish reading that. The white with the dark wax, and you'll have to, you know, see what your floor looks like. You know, if you're going to replace your floor too, whether you want to go with a dark wax like a black, like I'm using on this table, or whether you want to use like a grunge gray or a Van Dyke brown on like the piece that I did recently, the headboard footboard from our guest room. I did that with the brown wax. And it seems like I did another piece recently in here where I used the gray, because sometimes you think you want black, but black is so harsh that, you know, maybe you could go with some black and some gray, unless you really, really want the, you know, the black, which looks fabulous if you were going to have a black and white floor. So then decide whether your, you know, your flooring is more gray or your flooring has brown tones, because you could always go with such a deep brown that it, you know, appears black, and you can go with, you know, same thing with the gray. Or like I discussed earlier, if you get the black on there and it's too much, you go back with your clear back over it to erase some of it. But if you're using a glaze instead of a wax to apply that, you can get most of that off with a a rag, using a baby wipe or a wet rag or whatever. When you're removing, because the way the glaze works is you put some of that on and then you take some of that back off, and you can usually get a good amount of it off. And there are times you may have to repaint if it doesn't, and that's the beauty of painting something, is if you paint it and you get all that on there and you live with it a few weeks and you're like, that's just darker than I wanted it, then you paint it again. And it's, then you're more experienced and you know what you didn't like. Going to, like, if you have one in your town, what do they call it, a Habitat for Humanity store, a flea market or something like that, and buying sample cabinet doors that are made out of the, you would want to get one out of oak if your cabinets are in oak, because oak does have a lot of grain to it and a lot of grab. Then you can do a sample board, and I would recommend that to choose the shade of white that you want and to choose the shade of darkness, because if you have 2 or 3 sample cabinets, you can do those, and then before you put it on a permanent surface, you'll be able to look back over it. So I definitely would recommend a sample board. I had somebody call me the other day who, shoot, I went too far, didn't I? I did. That's what I get. Jackie, my jaw's working. Called me the other day or messaged me on Facebook, because I guess they know what I do and that I'm always looking and doing, and told me that they had a cabinet out by the side of the road by their house if I wanted to come get it. So of course I did. Went over and picked it up. It was starting to rain. I picked it up myself and put it in the back of my car, and then I didn't tell my husband about it for 2 days. And then I finally said, hey Eric, there's this big old cabinet that it was starting to rain when I picked it up, and it's in the back of my car, which is a car, like a crossover. It's not a pickup truck. And could you help me get it out? Because I want the doors off of it. I didn't want the whole cabinet. I just wanted the doors. Of course, he rolled his eyes at me, but he got it out and used his man brute strength to bust it up and just give me the doors off of it right there in the yard. Took a whole 5.5 seconds. So they're actually still in the back of my car. I hate to say. I got a bunch of toys back there. We do a big donation and get a box here for CASA, our local court-appointed special advocates for children program here, and we always get a box to collect for them for Christmas presents and stuff like that. And I've already got the back of my car loaded with presents, but they haven't brought our box yet, so we're waiting on CASA. And that cabinet is underneath all those toys. I mean, those cabinet doors, not the cabinet. Woman, pay attention. There we go. I'm trying to stay with the grain of the wood too. I don't want to go back and forth too much, because that can really, for one, rub it up in there to where you're going to have a real heck of a time getting it out. Get some in that crevice. I got so much on my brush, I don't want it to just sit here, but I got too much in that area right there. We have cherry cabinetry at our house, and my husband is a carpenter, and these were actually cherry trees that our buddies cut for us down the road. It's a local southern cherry, and then my husband milled it, or cut it on a sawmill into boards, and then milled the boards and planed them down to make them cabinet grade cherry. And so he loves the look of cherry wood, and he's spent so many dozens, maybe even hundreds for all I know, of hours creating those cabinets that they are not something that I would ever paint out of respect for him and his work. But man, they would look good in a cream color with a with a brown glaze, which I did our laundry room cabinets. I think that was on live here a while back too, or at least pictures of it were on there. And I did do those in a sort of I did them in DIY crinoline, I believe, and then a brown glaze. I made a glaze by mixing some latex paint and water. But those were, you know, cabinet grade boards. They were not, you know, a cherry tree that he cut down and made into cabinets himself. So now and then you gotta make sure you respect what they do too. It's been on here a little while. This one's stiffer to rub. I'm breaking a sweat here. I'm not a wintertime long sleeve type of girl. This is hot. I think we'll all be surprised in a minute, because as I'm wiping this off, it looks like I'm wiping it all off and just going straight back down to the red and leaving what's in the crevices. But in reality, because of the centerpiece, we'll be able to see what's really going on. Still got this one last edge to do. And remember, if any of those areas, if I had waited too long, say a customer came in and got me and I had to go into the other room and I was gone a long time and this black had started to dry on there and get too thick and get hard to remove, I would add a little more clear, go back over it, and use that like an eraser. There's a couple of little areas that are made to look like where screws went through. I want to make sure and get those real good. I didn't on the other side. I'll have to go back over those. Did I get this edge? I don't think I did. Man, that's tough. All this should count as steps on my Fitbit. Maybe I should walk in place as I go. I don't know if it counts if your Fitbit don't catch it. get in these little crevices that I told you about over there. I didn't get those on my first time around, or didn't get them good enough. I want to show y'all this top part before I start trying to figure out how I'm going to get in those crevices. It looks like I missed a piece right here. Get some more black. Thank you, Teresa. Can you see now? Let me see if I can tilt it over a little bit. I'm sure you can anyways. Can you see right there where I didn't do? So when you were looking, or to me, when I was looking straight at this, I was like, man, I'm getting almost all that black off. It's not even showing. But in reality, the table was a lot brighter red before I started. All I'm going to do now is put my finger in here and go back through and sort of even that out in between these crevices. I don't want a lot in there, but I do want some in there. So that's what I'm going to do to finish up for the day. And as I run that through, it's putting a little bit on this outer edge. I'll probably leave that as I go and then buff straight over the top again at the end, so that it gives it a chance to be a little darker just around those edges. And I hope this was able to help somebody. And if I missed your question or comment, or if you come back on the replay to watch it and you have a question or a comment, just post it in there, and if I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't, I'll find it out and I'll tell you. And we'll find out together. But I appreciate you joining me, and I hope you join us on Tuesday to watch us put the stencil here in the middle and do the finish up parts of the table. Thanks for joining me. Bye.